Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I just want to welcome all of our members and all of you that are watching possibly through other ways. And so we have a really great agenda today, and I think you're going to find this very entertaining as well as informative. Also, I'm delighted to have the commissioner join us today. So we're going to get started with our purpose of the Family Partnership Council. So just a reminder, the council serves in an advisory role to KDE and provides input regarding topics of interest to families. And so this is our purpose, and I am so delighted that many of you provide us with topics that really fit in with how the families and communities can assist schools in ensuring that achievement for all students is increased. And I'm just grateful for everything that you all do in terms of topics that really help guide this work. So I want to welcome, we have a new member that has joined us. This is the incoming president for the Kentucky PTA, and that is Autumn Nagel. And Autumn, if I'm saying your name incorrectly, would you please correct me?
Nagel, but it's close.
Nagel, okay, thank you. So we're delighted to have you join us today. And so before we begin, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge those impacted by the weekend storms. So our thoughts are with all of them during this time, and we do hope for a swift recovery for all that are affected. And I know Leah is on here. Leah Markham is one of our members, and we're delighted to hear that she is safe. She does live in London, and I'm in Somerset, and I am safe. And so we're just delighted and grateful, and we just really do pray for all of those folks that are impacted. So Leslie, before I give you the mic for roll call, just advisory council members, just please ensure that your video is streaming and that you are visible during the duration of this meeting. Your microphone should be muted if you're not speaking. Just a reminder that all discussions are made available to the public, so make sure your mic is unmuted when speaking to the group. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Spears from roll call. Well, lost Leslie.
Thank you. I was just talking up. I'll call each brother's name, and please just let me know that you're here. Of course, Marcia Van Hook.
Present.
Laura Beard.
Present.
Brittany Faulkner. Thought I saw Brittany get on. Brittany?
There was one member who put in the chat that they were going to reboot for the sound. I'm not sure if it was her or not.
Okay. She's here. Elizabeth Bruce.
Present.
Tara Trucker.
Present.
Leah Markham. Amy Nickerson.
Yeah, I saw her log in.
Okay, great. So Leah's here. Amy Nickerson. Alicia Miller. Elizabeth Delaney. Melissa Goins.
I'm here. My name is Mary Ann Jennings, and I'm here for Melissa Goins. I'm the assistant director.
Thank you for being here. Stephanie Barker.
Here.
Rhonda Logsden.
I hope y'all are well.
Thank you. Erin Weaver. And Autumn Nagel.
Present.
Thank you. And I will turn this right back over to our chair, Marcia Van Hook. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. We're going to move into the approval of the minutes. I just want to remind everyone, these are the minutes from our March 19th meeting. The minutes were attached to the calendar invite for today, but you also have access in the chat box. Leslie kindly posted them for us before we started. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes just to look over those, and then I will call for an approval. So if you have not had a chance to review those, they are in the chat, and I'll just wait just for a little bit. Okay, I see some of you reading them. I want to make sure everyone's had enough time.
We're reposting them right now.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call for a motion to approve. If you'll come off mic. You'll be reading, Leslie. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our March 19th meeting?
So moved. This is Elizabeth Bruce.
Thank you, Elizabeth. May I have a second?
A motion to approve. Tara Trucor.
Thank you, Tara. All in favor, if you just come off mic together and say yay.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you all. And with that, the minutes from our March 19th meeting are approved. And so Commissioner Fletcher is with us. And at this point in time, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Commissioner Fletcher. We're delighted to have you today and just have you with us to address this council. And I understand you have a document to share. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you, Commissioner.
All right, let's try that again. Thank you so much, Chair Van Hook. I really appreciate the opportunity here to talk with the team, but also too, thank you to each member of the committee. We're so thankful that each person on here has taken the time to be a part of this council, to be a part of our Family Partnership Council. I know that it takes some time, but again, we really appreciate your input here at KDE, and it gives us an added insight on different initiatives as we move forward. And again, thank you so much for serving. So now, Chair Van Hook, if I go too long, you're welcome to cut me short. That's okay. But I do want to spend a little bit of time, and I'll try to limit this to 5 to 7 minutes or so. We're at the point where we have gone through several iterations of the accountability model. We started, when I say we, I'm talking about the Kentucky Department of Education, the Kentucky United We Learn Council started the work, the foundational groundwork over 2 years ago, probably closer to 3 years ago, even before Robbie Fletcher was commissioner. In the spring of 2024, with interim Commissioner Robin Kinney and also with the Cool Council's leadership, they put forth basically a charge. Let's make sure, in order to have a prosperous Kentucky, let's do an accountability model that is both meaningful and useful to all learners. Now, notice it said learners. We're not just talking about students. We're talking about parents. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about business leaders. And the exciting part about this accountability model is the local accountability portion that's a part of this. Do we have, Chair Van Hook, do you have the previous slide? I just want to kind of go over it briefly. I mean, most of my talking points will be on. There we go. Thank you so much. Perfect. One of the things in talking with community people, and not just, there's thousands of people that have been a part of this process, and whether it be where we're talking about Shelby County with their profile of a learner work, or we're talking about Fleming County with their local accountability work, where we're talking about 16 other L3 districts that have been a part of this work as we move forward. And what we're hoping to do is to move a little away from just a standardized approach to everything. We want students to have agency. We want students to have an opportunity to not only demonstrate learning on state testing, but also in ways that are more personalized tracks. We also want to move away from comparison. Now, we still understand fully that we need to be able to identify those schools, those districts that need that help from KDE and from others as it relates to CSI, TSI, the status. And we want to make sure we get those districts help, but we also want to make sure that our districts have the opportunity to collaborate, to work together And we did some town halls as a part of this process for developing this accountability model, that we had 4 prototypes, and each prototype was followed with questions, working with the United We Learn Council, working with stakeholders across the Commonwealth, and then we'd get input on prototype 1, and then we would iterate with prototype 2. We went through 4 prototypes, and then we actually did another, after talking more with the United We Learn Council and others, and also the superintendent's advisory roles and other people across the Commonwealth. We moved into a model framework, which is a little more streamlined, if you will, of what we're looking at. And we actually went through four iterations of it. So this is framework 4.0, and a part of that process was doing the town halls. We did town halls in January and February, where we received feedback from people across the Commonwealth. We went to every co-op across the state, including we also did a Spanish speaking town hall also too, that had over 600 people that came in and gave input directly about our model. And during that town hall, we had, for example, Woodford County was talking about their process and while they're developing their profile of a learner and implementing that. They've had a profile of a learner for a while, but looking at local accountability. But the beauty of the slide that they gave is they gave districts the logo of every district that they're working with. And just for a second, if you can picture a map of Kentucky, their logos included Logan County, Kenton County, Shelby County. And I do this a lot because I'm putting pins on a map as we go through. Johnson County, Rowan County, Shelby County, and there's several others. But my point in showing that is there are districts working with other districts to develop local accountability models that best fit the needs of their community, their parents, their business leaders, their teachers, their students, most importantly. And so what we also wanted to do is try to move away so much of state control into more about local innovation. Now, again, we still have state level standards that we want to make sure that schools are teaching to, but we also want to give districts the opportunity to innovate. What does that look like? To give you a quick example, Logan County, I have a map of Kentucky above, so I look around sometimes when I say a district, I look at one of those particular districts. Logan County's had a local accountability model for a few years now, for a couple at least. And they have 4 pillars that's a part of their model. One is student achievement, where they take state level testing data, but also their map data and put it together and display that to their community. They also have growth. They talk about the growth of each individual student. They also have a readiness as another pillar, and readiness talks about certifications, AP classes, and other things of that nature. What are students taking and passing, and so they're ready for the next level. But the 4th one is student well-being. So one of the measures within that 4th pillar, they want to know what percentage, and the community asked for this, is my understanding. The community asked for this. What percentage of our students are participating in co-curricular or extracurricular activities? And they've done, so they've got their percentage, and part of their improvement plan is how do we get more students involved in extracurricular, co-curricular activities, whether it be a drama production, art displays, basketball team, JROTC, band, a lot of different areas where students are participating. Because if you look at a lot of the research will tell you that the more a student is involved outside the classroom, the greater the chances that they will be successful once they leave our 4 walls. Logan County realized that, and they made that a part of their local accountability model. Now, you don't see that on a paper pencil test. So we're wanting that local innovation so local businesses, local parents, our students can say, this is what's important to our community. And of course, I talked a little bit about feedback and support. So that brings us, if we could go to the next slide, please. Scroll on down a little bit. Perfect. And this is where we are. And we're in the process of taking this and talking with legislators, and some legislators had some input on this, but also trying to taking this to the Interim Joint Committee on Education, taking it out to partners, and we're looking at advocacy. So as a member of our council or Family Partnership Council, we're hoping that you can advocate for this also too. So if you look at this, there's two main parts. One, the state accountability indicators, and what these state accountability indicators meet all federal requirements, because we still have federal requirements we need to meet. And there's different buckets, if you will, that have to be filled. For example, summative performance on math and reading. We're always going to be focused on students achieving at or above grade level in or proficiency or better in reading and mathematics. A big difference in what this growth model or this model has is we're going to look at individual student growth. The old model has changed. So you're taking 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders this year and comparing them to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders last year. A growth model says, where did you get this student and where did you take them? Instead of looking at a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade versus last year's 3rd, 4th, 5th graders, the best, in my opinion, the best indicator of success is where did you get the child and where did you take them? So that's a big part of this federal requirement is moving back to, we had this model once upon a time, and there'll be some tweaks as we move forward, but looking at individual student growth. Also part of the state accountability piece is the transition readiness and graduation rate. We've invested so much, the legislature has invested so much into making sure our students have dual credit opportunities, making sure that they have certification opportunities through career technical. We feel like that's so important that we need to keep that in there and there's no change. English language learner, there is a tweak that we're looking for this in that now English language learners are tested they're included completely in the model after 2 years. What we're looking for is to give every English language learner the test the first year as a baseline. It's not part of accountability, but it's a baseline. The second year, their growth is a part of accountability. And then by their 3rd year, then they're included into the summative performance overall. And then one of the other pieces is right now, climate and safety survey is 4% of the overall formula for accountability. Almost all the groups that we talked to said they wanted to keep that, even though it's a small percent, they wanted student voice in that climate safety survey as a part of the federal requirements. Now I'm going to stop there for just a second. And if you think of what I just talked about as a formula, part of a formula for an overall accountability model, right now, like we have in some areas like reading and math is 45%, this is a certain percent, then all of a sudden it's all together for one big percentage. And then at that point, you look at what schools are in the bottom 5% or can be identified as CSI, TSI, or ATSI. So those are going to be the components moving forward of CSI identifying those areas. Science assessment is a part of federal requirements, but it doesn't have to be part of the formula. And I think we can all agree we've got some work to do in science, whether it be the assessment itself and also what's going on in the classroom. So we're actually going to be reporting science separately. We have, by federal guidance, we have to give a science test when we want to, and it has to be uniform. You can't have any discrepancy. It has to be the same test for every 8th grader across the state, and you also have to report it. So we're going to pull that out separately. It's not going to be a part of the formula for CSI, TSI. It's going to be actually reported separately. So now that takes care of all the federal accountability pieces. And I think there's some exciting parts about that. But to me, this next side, that light green, that almost teal color, if you will, on the left, is the most exciting part, because this is where we're looking for input from parents, from business leaders, from teachers, from students to say, what exactly are the characteristics, like when someone graduates, and I'll say from Wayne County, what exactly does that mean to the local community? If you got a diploma from Wayne County, what does that mean for the business leaders within that group? Does it automatically say something other than they met state standards, but have they met things like employability? Are they also good communicators, collaborators? Do they have persistence? Are they global learners? And I give you all those as examples of profiles of a learner that you can see across our state. So in that local accountability, we want districts to have the autonomy to have the different parts of what they deem as important. Just like Logan County with student well-being, what would another district say would be a big part, whether it be defenses of learning that's going on within their district? What would be something that their community would want to know more about? And you can see districts like Fleming, and I mentioned Fleming and Shelby, that they do dashboards that has been developed with local business leaders, also with parents, also with so many other community members to say, this is what we identify as things that we want from our students. And then they put that into an accountability model, but they also put that into dashboards so they report it to their local community to say, okay, the test, this is the state test, this is our score, but these are also other areas that we feel are very important. I will say this, I've told every district that I've talked to, everyone that I've talked to about this, if you give me a local accountability model that gives you 100% across the board, it's not worth the paper it's written on, nor is it worth the website it's published to, because this is about growth. What are you identifying as important measures within your district that's going to help your students be successful at whatever their next step is going to be? What does that look like? Now, we also have some opt-in, something you've never heard before from KDE. There are some opt-in tests. We're talking about local interim assessments. And to kind of give you just a quick background, because I'm already a little longer than expected, but to give you an idea of what this would look like, I think every district has either like a MAP, STAR, iReady, things of that nature. What we would like to do is develop an interim assessment like that for the entire state to replace, if a district wants to, if they want to replace their interim assessments so that it's aligned with state testing and they still get the same level of instructional data. But the most important part in all this combined is that what you see at the bottom left. We are requiring in local accountability that vibrant learning. How are you measuring things like work-based learning, maybe project-based learning, or defenses of learning, passion projects, things of that nature that's going on within your district? That has to be a part of your local accountability. But also too, writing and social studies. We're going to offer writing and social studies tests, but if a district has a better model for evaluating writing than what we have, they're welcome to use it and have it a part of their local accountability. So they can't say we're not going to assess writing. They can either use the state test or they could develop their own. Like some districts may like writing portfolios. I know people cringe sometimes when they say that, but you had some districts that had a really good writing portfolio regimen, if you will, and how they checked it. Or it could be through their defenses of learning. How's that writing assessment being embedded within those type of performances? So that local accountability piece is more about what do our parents identify? What do our business leaders identify? What do our students identify are measures that are not a pencil paper test that we want to make sure we're building our growth models, our improvement plans, if you will, to make our districts better, whether it be work-based learning, whether it be project-based learning, whether it be those type of activities, or even job shadowing, those type of things, so we can expand that. A lot of our districts do a good job on this, but we want every student across the Commonwealth to have those type of opportunities. So that's a little bit in a nutshell what the accountability model looks like. You have a copy of it here, and I will say take it and digest it and see, okay, well, these are things that I may have some questions on, and you're welcome to send those to us and be happy to answer them. The last thing I'll say is, when we start looking at an accountability model, we're hoping to take this, we will be taking this, Lord willing, to the legislature in 2026, in the winter of 2026, in January, and seeing what exactly they want to, what they'll accept, what they approve. And then even then, it's going to take us some time. You just can't flip a switch and say every district has a local accountability model. We would start off with a pilot phase where we have about 18 districts that are working on local accountability models already. And we could start with those 18 districts to say, this is what a local accountability model looks like. As a matter of fact, our innovation group, our division of innovation within OCIS is actually developing a playbook, if you will, of how a district can develop their own local accountability and what that looks like, with a key piece being collaboration with the local community. That is required. How do you collaborate with your local community to develop your local accountability piece? So in closing, you still have the state accountability indicators that meets federal requirements that are going to be used for CSI, TSI, ATSI, but also to help us to say these are districts that need those foundational supports in reading and mathematics. But you're also going to have districts these are two that are not going to be mixed. The local accountability is not part of the formula for CSI, TSI. And that's on purpose because we want to promote that collaboration among districts. but also building a better system that meets the needs of the local community on that left part. So I'll stop there. That's probably a little longer than you expected, but if you have a quick question or two, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
Commissioner, you can have all the time you need and want. That was a wonderful explanation. I'm going to open it up to the group if they have questions or comments for you.
Absolutely. It looks like Ms. Logsdon.
Thank you for going through and explaining that, because I love how you break it down. And I just wanted to ask, well, two things on like the state accountability. Will there be a part on there that is for the federal indicators for students with disabilities on that, that's included, just like the English language progress, but the students with disabilities progress? And also too, then on the local accountability indicators, several things then, and I guess you may not have an answer, but I think this gives so much wonderful opportunity where things can be tailored within the district. We can really look at those social, emotional, behavioral skills. We can look at, we are losing too many of our young children, and we can build in that concentrated within districts to get that help, and looking at that accountability and where we are and providing services, but also to our youth and tailoring it to, yes, job skills and readiness, but our youth don't have independent living skills to function as adults. And not that I'm, all of us are kind of way back with everything we've lived through these last few years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, as a mama of a 20-year-old, there's so much I did not do in preparing mine, right? And so how we really can look and hopefully have within these local models built in that family school partnership, and we can just strengthen that to where it's not a you and us, it's all of us, and that's the only way we're going to get our kids to where we need to be. So.
Well, I'll start off with as far as special education. I'll share as far as the state accountability. The summative performance still would have special needs students as a part of that, and also the individual student growth would also have special needs students part of that. So where did you get that special needs child, or every child, and where did you take them? Now, we can report out the subgroups, and that's part of this model, just like we do now. But so again, even though it's not a separate, and I don't think we would want it to be a separate category, I think it needs to be embedded within, and that's what this is. So in the summative performance, you're going to get individual student scores of even with all students, regardless of where they are. Everything from, some of our special needs students are still gifted and talented in some areas. So how did you address that student where they were, whether they had a need or a giftedness, and where did you take them as still part of that individual student growth? I will say another story that I'll share with you, and it relates back to FMD students. We were talking about the local accountability measures in these town halls, and we had one school system, and I'll share with you, it was Shelby County, they do defenses of learning, and one of the defenses of learning that they did with their FMD kids, they were learning about processes, about how to function independently. And one of the things that those students in their FMD class did was they made ice cream, and they went through the process of making ice cream. And the people that they were defending their learning to were their parents. Also school leaders and other things too, but their parents were there. So they not only went through, as an FMD child, went through learning about life skills, learning about directions, learning about algorithms. They also made ice cream for their parents, and that was a part of their defensive learning and their product in that. And that's a part of Shelby County's local accountability model, and how those students have grown. And you could see how, when we started this at the beginning, how did that student grow throughout? And that's a part of the local accountability. But one of the other things I didn't mention, as part of the requirement in local accountability, you also have to talk to us and give to us, how are you collaborating with your parents, with your business leaders, with your students, with your teachers, with people in your faith leaders. How are you collaborating with all those groups to make sure it is a we process? It is something that we're growing together and we believe in this. And then how do we grow together as a part of that? So to me, that local accountability piece is so exciting. Again, we're not running away from being accountable for math and reading. We're not. As a matter, if anything, we're embracing it. But we also want to say, you know, we want our kids to be able to not only function in society, we want them to thrive. So how are we teaching them to be collaborators, communicators, global learners? And I'll share one more story. When we talk about vibrant learning, one of the best examples, there's so many examples, hate to say the best, but one example I saw of this was in Madisonville, North Hopkins. They do something called the Freight Box Challenge. Now, the Freight Box Challenge, essentially these 40-foot long freight boxes that you see on barges and things of that nature, they got a grant to get one of those freight boxes, and then they go in and they reframe the inside of that freight box and turned it into a medical office. Their first medical office is in Liberia in Africa. They learned about the Liberia has civil war. It is the only medical office in that community in Liberia. And it was made by Kentucky students and shipped to them. They got input to say, okay, how can we better our design? And they're making a second medical office for another community in Liberia that doesn't have a medical office, and it's going to be shipped over to them. To me, that is the best tool that we have against chronic absenteeism. I mean, there is no way if I was a student that I would want to miss out on a day to be a part of that work, if at all possible. Matter of fact, I got to teach, and it was their agriculture class, and I went in and actually taught a little bit of trigonometry to their ag class, and they took it into their lab setting. So it was a great day for me. But those are the kind of things that we're seeing across our Commonwealth. How do we spread that? Whether it be tiny houses. We have a student in Christian County that works for a company that he works on drones, and he's got people from all over the world calling him in class to say, how do we fix our drones? And they have no clue. They're talking to a high school student. We have third graders in Bullitt County. I think it's Bullitt County that have already published on Amazon or selling books. I mean, how do we can spread that to give that opportunity to give every child that type of vibrant learning, if you will? And it starts with that collaboration with the local community, because once we get families on board and there's that partnership with families, with businesses, with community members, and parents, it's a we thing again. And it's a united we learn, and it's the way it should be. So again, I'm excited about this model. Again, we're not running away from math and reading. We're embracing it. We're embracing science. We're not running away from social studies. We're requiring that to be a part of the local district accountability. But again, there's a lot of opportunity there. So Ms. Nickerson, I think you're next.
Yes, hi. Thank you for joining us. I'm a parent in Woodford County, and so you mentioned about the Portrait of a Learner. And so speaking with community involvement, so for example, this year, right next to our school, they are building a housing development. And what some folks would see as maybe a sad thing right next to the school, invading the playground area, our students have actually been learning about the heavy equipment that's being used. They're doing math problems that involve the calculations to make the lots. They partnered with a local construction company. They gave them all hard hats and vests, and they participated and toured the facility, worked with them, talked about it. We also have had third graders doing activities involved with making city flags to kind of engage with the community, work with the city council. So we've had those things going. And so as you're speaking to, these are some examples of things we're doing that is new this year with project-based learning. They've had expo nights where parents are coming in to learn from their students about what they've been doing. So I appreciate that you have shared this, because it has been somewhat transformative. I have a third grader and also a kindergartner, but my third grader this year has made a lot more excitement about school. It just feels different. It's created a different culture within our building too. So I think it is a wonderful idea, and I appreciate you sharing.
Well, I've chilled the whole time, Ms. Nickerson. You've said that, and Woodford County was as I said earlier, was one of the districts that shared who all they're collaborating with. I mean, we had Woodford County and Clark County. They spend hours. They'll spend days together just to say, okay, what are you doing? What are we doing? Are we meeting the needs? We'll take that back to our community and let's talk about it. And again, I'd heard about the heavy equipment. I was like, okay, I'm sure they're covered liability, but I actually, maybe I saw that once too, but still yet talk about a different experience. You know, we're about to put out a video, and we have of course, a lot of our districts have students that are doing job shadowing and being a part of hospitals. One of our districts, we have students that are scrubbing in on baby deliveries. You know, and then we also had a student talking about just being a part of the Educators Rising program, where they're spending half their day at an elementary school in an aide/teacher role of trying to work with younger kids in order to have more teachers down the pipeline. Matter of fact, Nelson County has a teacher apprenticeship program where they're paying students to be apprentices as a teacher. So again, those type of activities there's a lot of great pockets, and everybody's got a great story, but how do we spread that across to make sure everybody's getting that? But thank you so much for sharing that. Ms. Bruce?
Hi, I have a comment as opposed to a question, but I think the local accountability is a wonderful platform for some of our older students who participate in the career and technology centers. I never knew until my children were in high school what opportunities there were for students who may not want to go the traditional college pathway, or maybe they want to do an associate, but also have a hands-on or some training with that. I think the local accountability being accessible on every district website to say, hey, this is what industry we have in our community. This is what we offer at our school. We had this many students who got this and could directly enter the workforce. I don't know of any better testament for some of our older students to demonstrate how our schools are putting children in the workforce. Well, they'll be adults by the time they graduate, but getting our students ready to have a career, whether that's a traditional college pathway or whether that's something through the technical school. It's an amazing resource, and I was a person that didn't know too much about it until my kids were in school. I think this platform would be a great way to get that word out as well.
Well, and one of the things, along those lines of vibrant learning, we talk about collaboration, but also collaboration among students. To give you an example, there's several districts in Eastern Kentucky, and I think Hopkins County has this, and a few others, where they do tiny houses. And for those of you who may not be, where you get the basically the long wagon with the rail. It's kind of a flatbed almost with wheels on it, and they actually have your engineering class design the tiny house. You have your carpentry class to build it. You have your electricity class to wire it. You have your art class to paint it. You have your business classes to market it. It's sold in an auction and budgeted, and now you bring that budget back for the next year for their tiny house as they move forward. And talking about our career technicals, not only getting some life experience, we had one district. There were two students that went through, and when they were finished, they started their own tiny house business. And they were building some tiny houses for different, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think they sold some even to the state parks as they went through. So again, for all of our kids, career technical and otherwise, to say, this is my gift. This is what I excel. This is whether it be, and all of this is career. I would love to remove career technical from the vocabulary. To me, it should be career. Whether you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, welder, carpenter, it's career. And we want our kids to be career ready. And as far as, all this is important in our community and our societies. So.
Rhonda asked a question, and Rhonda, I'll let the commissioner speak to it. I could also talk a little bit about it as well. But she's asked, how can we ensure all students and families know what opportunities are available within their community, their district?
And that would be part of this local accountability model, is to make sure that we're communicating that. And I think, and I can't think of a district off the top of my head that doesn't have it maybe part of their website. But you have a lot of districts that really advertise, these are the career technical pathways we have. These are the opportunities. Sometimes we have to dig a little bit for that, but a part of that local accountability model is making sure we advertise what we have and what we would like to include, and two, really personalizing the pathway. Let's say, even if we don't offer, I'll say biomedical. Well, I'll give you a good example. Menifee County is one of our smallest counties in the state. they partner with Montgomery County to give their students the opportunity to go to hospitals to do those job shadowing workforce. To have a community that may not have that opportunity to partner with another community and within that to say, we want our kids to have this, I think that's phenomenal. But again, a part of this local accountability model is making sure, one, we need to really do a better job of advertising what we do. We really do. We need to do a better job of telling our story. And then saying, okay, this is where we want to go. And that's a part of that local accountability process.
And Rhonda, I'll add to that as well. I'll just expand upon what the commissioner said. In the work that I do with districts and schools, and especially in the community school, community school realm, we do look at what assets are in that community and who can we partner with that maybe we're not connected with. And I have a quick example from Shelby County as well. I mean, they have partnered with a local farm, and the community has a specific need that they do not have produce at the beginning of the season to supply this market, but yet their property backs up to the school. So now the students are working to actually grow the food. So think about the skills that they're learning in their curriculum to actually supply this market with tomatoes and greens and things, green onions, I think they said, just early on so that there's actually food for the community. But it has emerged into a tremendous partnership with that community and just beginning to look at, we refer to it as asset mapping. What assets are there that we can utilize and plug in to really help our kids get these skills and be workforce ready? So there's a lot of work ongoing. The second thing that you mentioned, Commissioner, is about those stories. And so there's a lot of things going on. I know I'm going to share just a little bit our success stories that we're collecting about things that are going on across the state and in schools and districts and how those have an impact on a student, on the family, and on the community. We also have, like, just in listening and thinking, it's like, how do we start capturing and sharing these innovative stories? And so how could we package that and collect those as well? Because there are so many things going on that are positive for our students. Unfortunately, I apologize, I have a mint in my throat. I was coughing, so bear with me. Oftentimes the news is full of really sad stories or things, and it really does kind of, give us a black eye is the word I wanted to use. But there are so many things to share that are just phenomenal. And Kentucky is being watched in terms of what we're doing with community and how we're connecting with them from other states across the nation. So I just wanted to share that as well. We're doing a lot of things right. We need to do better about telling our own story.
But one of the things that Kentucky has been invited to be, we're one of 6 states have been asked to be a part of the reimagining the high school experience for students. And it's because of some of the great things that's already going on. But, for example, what policies or maybe what statutes out there may be blocking some of the innovation that we have from going even further. So looking at how do we make sure that our innovators are having free space to give students every opportunity to be successful, but also too, how do we ensure that we give everybody across the Commonwealth, as we say, from Pikeville to Paducah, we give everybody those opportunities, and also from Ludlow down to Monticello, we want to make sure they have those opportunities too. But with that being said, there's so much great work that's going on in our schools. And again, sometimes we don't see it till we have our own kids to go through it, which is partly our fault for not telling our story, but two, just making sure that we have that, we're intentionally getting everybody involved, because at the end of the day, students are going to benefit. When we work together in this role, students are going to benefit. And I'm talking about all students. Even, if you look at talking about 3rd graders publishing on books on Amazon, a special needs students making ice cream for their parents. That story, that by itself almost makes me cry a lot. Mm-hmm. But also too, having the drone and the student working with drones, the tiny houses, the Freight Box Challenge, the Ignited Institute in Northern Kentucky, where you have multiple districts going together to make sure students have these type of opportunities. We just want to make sure that our accountability model encourages, pushes to make sure those things are happening across our state, our Commonwealth. Now, I know you're going to have second thoughts about having the long-winded commissioner on here, because 7 minutes has turned into 40. So
Yeah,
I
we are
apologize for that.
No, don't apologize. This has been so informative and really helpful. And you really kind of set the stage for what's going to follow in our meeting today and the work that we are doing in this realm. And so I want to thank you so much. You are welcome back anytime. You are welcome to stay with us. I know you have a packed schedule. I'll see if there's any last question. I saw some comments. Stephanie commented about partnerships continuing outside the traditional day. There's a lot of those going on already and continued. I'll talk about that at the success story part in just a minute. There's a lot of things that are being done and we're trying to get those stories out. So Commissioner, thank you so much for coming, and please stay on if you'd like to.
Well, I have to be off here by 2, so I probably will go ahead and step off. And I was going to listen to part of the meeting, but again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can email me directly. But again, you're welcome to talk to anybody on my team. I have a great team. There's several on the meeting here today. But also going back, please, when we talk about our councils, being attentive, being a part of the process, being a part of being engaged. People like you that are part of this Family Partnership Council, that input, that listening, and getting the stories out is so important, especially in the local level. So, we appreciate what you do and keep it up. And we thank you so much for it.
Well, thank you. And with that, I think we will move on to our first speaker on the agenda. We have Melody. That means I need to take control back, I think. If you'll bear with me a second. Right. Can we see my screen now?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. It was stuck for a second. We're going to go on with, and we have Melody and Andrea. So we have Melody Cooper, who is the policy advisor from, we call it OSEAL, Office of Special Education and Early Learning, along with Andrea Bartholomew. They're both in the same department from KDE, and they're going to speak to us about universal preschool. So Melody, I'm going to let you have the floor.
Okay, and yeah, thank you. Nice to be with everybody this afternoon, and I'm glad, Andrea, thank you for joining me as well. I know we had heard that you all requested to hear some information about universal preschool, so we've got some high-level things to share, and then, we'll be happy to take questions if you have any after that. So one of the things right away is, how is universal preschool really defined when we hear this? And honestly, when you look into some of the literature that's out there, there are several ways to define it. Now, one of the ways that we think about it, we kind of borrow from the National Institute for Early Education Research. We call it NEAR here in the early childhood world. And they define universal preschool as an opportunity where all families with 4-year-olds have the opportunity to enroll their children in some kind of preschool setting, with the only criterion being age, 4 years of age. And then they further define it. Our state doesn't really have a set definition. I think that would involve the General Assembly as well. But NEAR defines it as also serving at least 70% of 4-year-olds in a community or a state. So that's kind of what we can keep in mind as we're talking about this, but that age would be the criterion. Okay, so next slide. So there are a few big buckets that you would want to consider. So if we're ever thinking, because this is something that these conversations come up every year. There's a lot of interest in early childhood. It's a bipartisan issue usually that, that everybody is interested in opportunities for early childhood education. But there are some big buckets that would need to be considered if Kentucky were to ever be thinking about any type of universal preschool situation. So of course, there's how do we provide access for all children? That's going to involve funding, sustainable funding that can be reliable year after year. Talking about different enrollment efforts, there are things that happen now in the different systems that serve early childhood populations. So how would that be coordinated? And then, of course, quality comes into play as well, and that can be defined differently. And Andrea, please feel free to jump in wherever. But, quality is one of those issues where you're talking about learning standards, curriculum, even teacher qualifications, or whether or not transportation's provided, those kinds of things. So there would be a lot to consider when we're thinking about universal preschool as a possibility ever. Andrea, do you have anything to add there on that piece?
Sure. This is Andrea. So I'll just add that as you look across the landscape of the nation, early childhood is provided to our students in so many different ways. So when we think about trying to find a model or trying to find someone that we can, look to for guidance, pretty much anything you can think of is out there. So this could be a place that we could really be innovative with how we teach our youngest learners in Kentucky and thinking about what serves our kids and families best here. But these, as Melody said, would be the 3 big buckets that we would really have to focus on and see and really flesh out to see what that would look like for all of our students. We currently serve around 19,000 preschool students in a targeted format. So this would obviously increase that enrollment across the state if this was to be something that comes to fruition at some point.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, so next. All right, and so this is just a quick, I will go ahead and say this is from the Education Commission of the States, which is an excellent resource, but it's several years old at this point as far as those numbers go that they have at the bottom, but it's still a good source for just looking at the different types of governance structures that would also have to be considered. So some states have created something that's a brand new entity that would then oversee, because as Andrea said, we are mixed delivery. We have so many options right now. There's the private child care sector, there's Head Start, there's state-funded preschool. So some states have created new entities where all of that would be consolidated under one umbrella. And then there's the consolidated there's the consolidated model there where they use the existing entity that oversees multiple components, and then kind of a coordinated system, which I think, while Kentucky doesn't have universal preschool as defined by NEAR, we have the targeted system. We do have the coordinated in our early childhood landscape. There are different agencies that oversee the different pieces. So, the private child care would be under CHFS, and then KDE manages the state-funded preschool. And then I guess Head Start is kind of how would you describe that, Andrea? I don't know if they oversee it, but they're with the Head Start. They're more the go-to for the Head Start piece.
There's a Head Start collaboration director that is within the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, GOEC. But Head Start is monitored or, governed at a federal level. Our region is Region 4, which is located in Atlanta.
And anything there, Andrea? I'm just kind of talking away. I want to make sure you jump in if you've got some things to add.
You got it covered pretty good.
Okay, and so then when we're thinking about benefits of universal preschool, it's the economic development, obviously, more opportunities for working families to get out there in the workforce, and then of course school readiness and beyond too. So there is some evidence to suggest that it was actually fairly interesting not too long ago that they did kind of a deep dive into some of the data, some of the longitudinal data that had been collected as part of an early childhood longitudinal study, a big survey. And they looked at outcomes for kids if they had been in preschool settings based on various ways that states offered it. So if they offered it as a targeted system where, certain populations are targeted, like income, and then they looked at states where they are, or states or cities, because sometimes within states, different cities and counties will offer universal preschool, even if it's not statewide. But they looked at preschool experiences where it was a universal system, as we would have, as we've talked about, and then some where there were communities that didn't offer any type of state-funded preschool at all, that even though the entire country has the federal Head Start program. And so what they found when they looked at those results is that kids who were low income benefited more from their programs when it was a universal program, when it was open to all kids, so lower income kids benefited in both of the targeted and the universal, but more so in the universal, which was interesting. And they hadn't pinpointed why that was. There were a couple of ideas about what could have caused that, but just kind of an interesting thought when you think about school readiness and those kinds of things, opportunities for kids of the benefits. And then, Andrea, I'm sorry, I want to also offer space for you to jump in if you need to. Okay.
I would just say quickly that we have to consider Kentucky has a unique situation with early childhood providers and state-funded preschool. You have a dual certification for regular education and special education with the IECE degree. Not every state requires even a teaching degree. So I think we have a real opportunity to look at that here with our already having a really highly certified teacher in those classrooms with our kiddos. That really increases the quality of what our kids are getting. I think that leads to the outcomes that Melody was talking about.
And then, yeah, thank you for that. And that goes into one of those, like the big buckets that we talked about earlier with the quality, how would those decisions be made? What would that look like? So great point with the IECE requirement here in Kentucky. But of course, with benefits, there are also lots of challenges. Funding being a huge, it's an expensive endeavor. That's where, and when you even look into the things the conversations that have taken place at the federal level, that usually that hasn't gone anywhere at this point, because it's just such a huge funding piece, and it can look so different, depending on the different models that you decide to go with. Like there was one in Colorado. I think this is fairly recent that Colorado adopted kind of a universal preschool model, and theirs seems to offer 15 hours of universal preschool to everybody, but then beyond that per week, 15 hours per week. But then beyond that, there are other criteria where you may qualify for more. And they used looks like they use a mixed delivery where it could be a state funded, a Head Start, or a childcare type of setting. So, but yeah, that's some of the ways that they're looking at these challenges. So then, as Andrea mentioned, qualified teachers, finding them. I mean, teacher shortage is not just a K through 12 issue. It is a preschool issue as well, especially when we're talking about IECE certified teachers. So that's a challenge. Classroom space, facility, the capacity in the facilities to hold all these extra kids. And then, of course, not wanting to have any negative unintended consequences on the child care landscape in the communities, where if child care are counting on, income from 3 and 4 year old children, and all of a sudden that's not there anymore, that's gonna have a rippling effect for families if they can't stay afloat to serve the younger kids too. So there are challenges that haven't been worked out yet. So that's a big piece of it as well. Andrea, would you want to chime in there?
You covered all my thoughts with that one.
Okay, and so yeah, that's about it from us. Happy to take any questions as far as general information on the universal preschool that we have.
If any of our members have questions, you're certainly welcome to come off mute at this point. Oh, I do see a hand. Rhonda, go ahead.
Rhonda. I know, right? I'm always the one with the annoying hand that goes up, right?
You have great questions, Rhonda. Keep it going.
Listen, there's going to be a day when you all block me being able to have access to my hand. I'm just saying.
Never.
So, and because I
Never.
was listening and everything's sinking in. So this is what we hope that it's going to go to when, and I probably missed it, but so when would there be the decision that this would, unless I'm totally messed up, where this would go into effect? Because it is so critical that everybody have access to preschool, right? So when could this actually become?
So, okay, great question. Great question, Rhonda. I'm like tripping over my words here. And thank you for that. So currently in Kentucky, there's not like are we passing this bill, yes or no? So the things that typically happen is that, as Dr. Fletcher, I saw that he put in the chat before he had to hop off, that universal preschool is usually one of the legislative priorities for KDE and the KBE. And so historically, the KBE has usually put forth an additional budget request when they send those things over to the General Assembly to ask them to consider in the budget. Sometimes the governor makes that a priority in his or her budget request as well when they're putting that forward to the General Assembly. And then every year, as I said, it's a bipartisan interest issue. Every year there are bills put forth from both sides of the aisle about early childhood, and it is always of interest. But again, it's that funding piece. And typically, like I know one of the ones that was more recent in the last budget session, I guess 2024, going into that budget session, Senator Danny Carroll had a bill that he put forth that was more of like kind of focusing on early childhood education and wrapping things under one umbrella of early childhood education and looking at not only state funded and Head Start, but also including that child care and that piece as well. It was not it wasn't something that they were prepared to appropriate funds for at that time. But so especially we've got a budget session coming up for 2026. I wouldn't be surprised to see it be a topic of conversation again. All of the bills look a little bit different. Some of them just try to expand it from the current at-risk level to include more kids. It just, every bill looks a little bit different. They all approach it in different ways, but so far nothing has actually happened with those bills. But that's what it would take, would be the General Assembly to put that through. That was probably too long-winded of an answer for that question, but
that's a good question, Rhonda. I'm sure others had that on their minds as well. So if there are no other questions, I just want to thank Melody and Andrea for taking time out of their day as well. Yes.
I'm sorry, I saw a question in the chat.
Okay, good. I missed it.
Leah asked if it would be compulsory. In any of the conversations that I've heard of, it's still voluntary. Like even in Colorado, it's voluntary. So I would not expect to see that. I would be really surprised if all of a sudden they made preschool compulsory.
Okay, thank you for that question, Leah. Yeah, that was a good question as well. All right, I just want to thank you both. If there are no other questions in the chat or from anyone else, I do appreciate you coming and talking to us about this, and you both are welcome to stay with us for the remainder of our agenda and hear our other speakers. But I understand if you're busy and you need to hop off, we understand that as well. So thank you so much. Next up on our agenda, we have the pleasure of having Mark Maviano. He is the Kentucky Community Schools Initiative Director from McCracken County Schools. And so, Mark, I'm going to let you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Marcia. I appreciate it. I tell you what, I join these groups and I always come away with a ton of notes of great ideas. So I appreciate the opportunity, Marcia, to speak. And by all means, I am not the expert in community schools or all that, but I could definitely tell you some successes and a lot of challenges. So I'm here to showcase what's happening here in Western Kentucky, the real Western Kentucky. Way over here, it's almost sometimes a different part of the state, but that's okay. Anyway, just a little bit about myself. I'm an educator, 26 years in, can't believe next year is going to be 27. Hard to believe. Last 13 years, I was an administrator, a principal of an elementary school. So when I had an opportunity to kind of work with students specifically with removing barriers, and if you're not familiar with this grant at all, it is a path to a larger life like this slide says. So who wouldn't want that job, to work with students and families and make sure that they're having success once they leave high school and beyond? So this just resonated with me. And you're probably already saying, but yeah, you were a principal of an elementary school. Didn't you already do that? It is so dynamic as an administrator. Things are kind of constantly happening, and you are juggling so many things that you just don't have time to focus in on really the needs of your families and students like you need to. And sometimes we rely on our counselors, our family resource centers. But I'll be honest with you, until community schools and this grant came along, there was really no real structure or way to do things. And that's what I really love about this process. So Marsha, I don't know if you can be a fan for me. The big change really is the big 5 shifts. A lot of times we get in this zone with the blinders on, is how I kind of describe it to most folks. And we don't see things outside of our own workplace. We go to work, we do our things within that building, but we don't let people in. We don't want people to really see what's happening. So that is the big shift. If I could kind of summarize this for you, it's not working in silos, but it's really allowing our families and our community inside the building and making decisions together for the benefit of everybody. And that has been the big piece that we just don't have time to do. And that's what's been so rewarding about this grant. And again, it was awarded to 20 districts across the state, 40 schools. So I'm responsible for 2 schools. I have the high school, and I also have an elementary. And so they are both high performing schools. So Marsha, if you want to go ahead. So what do you do? The big question is, how do you take a high school that is number 17 in the state? We had a kid go to Harvard last year. We have kids who are getting perfect scores on the ACT, 36s. They're going to be med school and all this other stuff. So how do you take a school that on the surface looks great and make it better? Okay, good to great, right? So what you do is you start off with an asset map. And so initially we brought all our community members in, and Marsha, you can go to the next slide. And we went ahead, and again, community schools is focused on these 4 pillars like the table, and you want all your legs on that table to be very strong. So through that asset map and talking with our community members, we looked for areas that we felt like we were good at, but then also recognizing areas that we were not so good at. So right now, I'm going to focus on the high school. So if you've not been at McCracken's High School, it is a brand new building, very beautiful. It brought 3 high schools into one, so we're about 2,000 students. So how do you take 2,000 students and make them feel like they're a part of a small community? And one of the things that we noticed right off the bat is that our students really didn't feel like they were part of things. Commissioner Fletcher talked about the importance of being a part of a group and being connected. So one of the things we really wanted to focus on, we had 2 goals we came away with. The first one is mentorship, making sure all of our kids, when they walk into that building, it can be intimidating. How do you connect them with all the clubs, all the things that we have going on, and just being in tune? Do they have an adult that they can connect with? And this was really personal and close to us, because during the year that we started this grant, we had a student that took his life. And when that happens, it just rocks the entire community. This kid had everything going for him. He had a scholarship to the University of Louisville. It was dreams to be a chemist, part of our academic team. How did we miss this? Okay, so that was one of our goals that we wanted to kind of fix or address. The other one was about post-secondary readiness. How do you take 2,000 kids in a building and really make sure that you're getting the needs met for those students? Too many kids were falling through the cracks. They didn't know what was really available to them. They hit the easy button and they went to college. And sometimes when they go to college, we all know that they're not successful when that happens. And so we had to address all of those things. So what I'm going to do is, tell you our why. So I'm going to introduce you to a young man named Kenny. He's on our next slide. Everybody kind of has a Kenny, okay? Kenny is a kid who comes from a rough home life. Mom and dad are in and out of jail. He's one of 3 boys. There's no preventative health care, transportation issues. You could check off every kind of list. In fact, the 3 boys went to live with grandma, and it was just too much that Kenny moved out. In fact, he moved in with his girlfriend, which is a recipe for a whole lot of different issues. So Kenny became our poster child. When you meet Kenny, you just can't help but fall in love with him. We met Kenny when he was a junior. We had floss and gloss. Everybody's familiar with that. When the dental folks come on in and they look at your teeth. He had 14 cavities, and his younger brother, Cody, had 18. So all kinds of things had not been taken care of for these kids. They had no parent involvement, again, and no just support from home. But that's when people around stepped up, our family resource. So Kenny had this gift for welding. And so we said, you know what, Kenny, you would be great as a welder. Let's get you down to our CTE program at the Hub, and let's make sure that you have this experience with welding, because it's opened up a whole lot of different opportunities for you. So we had to get him and provide him a pair of steel toe boots. And again, getting into the Hub in McCracken is a little different. There's only 18 slots. We match this, we partner with Paducah City. So it's like hitting the lottery, and it's kind of sad to say. But again, this is a barrier that we recognized that we needed to change. So while at the Hub, we recognized that he's pretty talented at welding. So we said, you know what, let's go ahead and let's try to get you an internship at Ingram Barge, which is one of our industries that is really huge in our community. And so we got him an interview at Ingram Barge. Okay, so we're getting his resume. Again, he has to earn it. Getting his resume together, getting him some clothes, preparing him for this big day. But then all of a sudden, his transportation, his car breaks down. Okay, so this is where Kenny's story kind of takes a little bit of a turn, but it's not because of luck. It's because of the people that stepped up. So what I'd like to do now, and I'll tell you the rest of the story later, is just tell you a little bit about some of the strategies that we've been doing. So Marcia, if you want to go ahead and click right. So part of the community schools is obviously, let's get our community involved. So we worked really close with our chamber. And what we did is we brought in 3 local industries, and this is called our Business and Education Partnership. We started off with the trades, we went to healthcare, and then we went to the river industry. And this was a way for us to really, we had a lot of turnover in our buildings, and we wanted to introduce our new administrators. We wanted to really make new connections. We also wanted to have a dialogue about how we could do school better. What are we missing? We wanted to go beyond the durable skills. We wanted to talk about just internships, partnerships. What does that look like? And it was a super success. People walked away with all kinds of business cards, but something was missing. And we knew that we couldn't bring those folks back unless something changed, okay? So I'll let you go ahead, Ms. Marcia, and change this real quick. So in the meantime, we knew that we had to kind of make sure that all of our students realized and recognized what's in their backyard. If we want to grow our own, we want them to stay in our own community. We're not too far from Nashville. We're not too far from St. Louis. A lot of kids see the bigger cities and they want to leave a little bit, but we've got so many opportunities in our backyard. And that's why we came up with this Mustang Connect. These are all the industries right here that they can have access to. And this Connect has 2 QR codes on it. So on the right side, I'm sorry, if you're looking at it, your left, I guess, there's a QR code that is for students. And that's where students can take their phone and click on it, fill out a quick survey. And what that does is immediately sends it to our college and career readiness coach, and she can see what they're interested in, how we can match them up. But again, this is transactional. This is kind of exhausting. We're taking one kid at a time, trying to connect them with an industry partner. Very tiring. So we knew we had an issue there. The part of the QR code on the right is actually for our community members, okay? And that's where they can scan that and say, listen, I need X amount of kids to do this, or this is how I want to partner. So this is really an interactive wall that everybody walks by each and every day and reminds students of all the things that are available to them in our community. So we're excited about this, but it's still missing something. And that's where Ford NGL comes in place. So Marcia,
Yeah,
next
Mark,
slide.
will you just tell them where this wall's located in the building? I'm sorry, let you get a drink. I know we're all.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
and,
okay.
and, yeah, interrupt me, ask questions. This is in the very front of the building. The gym is right next to it. So a lot of our people who come in from outside for ball games, whatnot, they'll walk by this. They get to see it too. And in fact, a parent, if you're struggling as a parent trying to find employment, we're more than happy to help you too. So, but we're going to take this a step further. This has been a big piece of, or a small piece of something very big. We know that we have an issue with kids. We're just cranking out diplomas in the state of Kentucky. We want to make sure our meaningful diplomas, they really mean something, which by the way, I just made up that logo. I've been working with Delaney Stevens and I put her name on it. And I said, listen, we want to be the guinea pigs. We want to make sure when our kids graduate, we want a Pritchard Committee meaningful diploma stamp on that thing. And we want to meet all the criteria that encompasses. And I think we're on the right track. You know, when we started that high school, we started it was called the house system. And the idea is that we'd have small learning communities in the dig. That never happened. So we're 13 years in. And I think what happened is we all kind of buried our head because it's like a huge train. How do you do this? So we have got an innovative superintendent. We've got a new principal. And it was this just perfect storm, listening to our community members, all these things that say we need to change this whole how we do school. And if you're familiar with Ford Next Generation, Jefferson County, Nashville, all those folks, it is an academy model. And what it's going to do is basically force us to whittle down our pathways. But in those academies will be pathways in which our students now feel a part, 50% or more of their classes will be in those academies. But those students now, it's not a transactional, it's transformational. They have off-ramps in which, depending on what they want to do in life, I just want to go right into the workforce, or if I want to just get a certificate, or I want just 2 years or 4 years, there's an opportunity and we can connect them with somebody in our community. So this is an exciting and just, it's going to change our community, the way we go about it, but also about how we partner with our community members. Like I said earlier, it was transactional. Now we're going to have an action plan for all our community members, and they know what to expect from the very beginning. What is their partnership with our high school? What does that look like? We're going to sit down with them, write it out, and it's more intentional and more structured. So this is an exciting venture for us. We thought we were smart enough when we started the high school to do this on our own, but we need help. Ford's been around for a while. There's several communities that have Ford NGL schools. So we're excited about this. This will probably be in place in August of 2026. So that is a huge stride, and that is a big rock item that so many people are a part of. And if I were to retire tomorrow, this thing would still be moving forward. And I wish my son could be a part of it. Unfortunately, he's a junior, won't happen, but I look forward to all those kids that are coming up that are just going to have a thumbprint on every child to understand what their needs are, which we haven't had before. So anyway, okay. One of the other things that we've been very excited about is Freshman Academy. And again, we didn't really know this, but this kind of ties into the Ford model. But this is a way for us to kind of connect with kids. When they started at the high school, one of the things all the parents and everybody said is that they just are thrown out there. So what we did this year is we took all our freshmen and we kept them in one little isolated area so they get used to the culture and the expectations of high school. But it was also a time for us to talk about mentorship and just bringing on Youth Thrive and those protective factors. And we really had some rich conversations. You can see some pictures here of students and some of the activities that we did to kind of get them connected. And we had a group, Freshman Fundamentals, in which all students had a chance to just talk about the 5 protective factors through a deck of cards and conversation. So this was really, really cool. We actually, with United Way, our PALS program, which again, Youth Thrive, had a kind of a rocky start. We didn't have a lot of kids who really wanted to be a part of it. And we kind of tried to get, recommendations from previous schools, but it just didn't work real well. But it wasn't until we got moms and dads involved and we did a survey that, man, we had all these parents saying, yes, we need this. We just had a divorce. My son or daughter is struggling with this. I would love for you to have them in some type of mentor program. So it wasn't until we kind of listened and changed things a little bit that it thrived. So it is something that we really are going to continue to improve on. In fact, next year, we want to have seniors a part of this. So that was an exciting positive strategy that we had during our community schools this year. All right, what do we got next here? Another big need that we have a huge influx of ESL students, but I think we all recognized at our district that we weren't doing a good job of meeting the needs of those students. We actually have one person who's doing all of she's our ESL person. But anyway, when we did a survey with families and all those folks who were involved with this, one of the number one things they said they wanted to learn is just simply English. I'm not really so worried about pathways. I just want to learn English. So one of the things we did, and we partnered with the UK Extension Office, is offer classes where families can learn English. They were like 7 weeks. And it was just this huge success. We had families not only from our school, but outside the school. We had river industry folks come in. We had just all over the place trying to learn English, and it was so rewarding. And it's a strategy that we're going to continue to do. We also tried to do events that invited families in to feel a part of our school. These were free tickets to soccer games, free concessions, anything to draw them in to feel a part of our bigger school. Okay, let's see what else we got. Another thing that we were really excited about was JAGS. We brought Jobs for American Graduates in. This was huge for us, and this is a chance to, if you're not familiar with JAG, it is an opportunity to bring students together to learn about leadership, careers, all the things to make sure that they're successful. But the part I love about this program more than anything is the fact that when seniors graduate from the JAG program, we continue to stay with them 12 months after graduation. So this is exciting because we want to make sure, we want to make sure that they're successful. They always have somebody that they can come back to if things aren't going well for them. We had such a huge success with this program that we have 2 middle schools who are also going to do it next year. And so that's exciting to kind of see it unfold and kind of spread throughout our district. So that was exciting. Let's see here. Last slide for the high school. One of the things nope, go ahead. You're good. One more slide. One more slide for the high school. I'm trying to keep it short and I'm talking fast. I think you gave me 15 minutes, Marsha. I'm already over.
That's all right, Mark.
So being family friendly certified. So this is huge for us. So how can you be a community school, community school when you're not family friendly? So our goal right now is to make sure we have that certification. We have a lot of work to, that we have to do. We have these 5 different buckets right here, areas that we are focusing on. Right now, we consider ourselves as come as we need you kind of school. We need to change that. So if there is a challenge, how do you become a family-friendly certified school when you're so big? There are so many things going on. How do you make everybody welcome? This has been a great roadmap and just a way to kind of pull off the Band-Aid, evaluate what you're doing, look for ways that you can improve. This is my baby, if there's anything. I want to make sure that we are family friendly at McCracken High School, but we've got a lot of work to do. But I'll have a great team around me, and they're going to implement things next year that are going to get us towards that family friendly certification. I've got a couple more slides real quick. I haven't talked really about Reedland Elementary. They are family friendly, which is awesome. They're also number 4 in the state academically on the last KSA assessment, which is super. But they still have things on the surface. Again, they look like they're doing great, but there's some issues there. So this is a high poverty school. If you go to the next slide, Marcia. Our Brigance, our kindergartners, you guys talked about all that, preschool, all the things that we like to talk about. At McCracken County as a whole, we're doing great. We're above the state average on Brigance, but at Reedland Elementary, we're way below. So one of the things that we really focused on is trying to, how do we connect with our families? How do we get them into our preschool program? So Marcia, if you want to hit the next slide, one of the things that we've done is try to partner with all our healthcare providers in our community. We've got a QR code that are in doctors' offices. We've got little cards in Spanish and English. And what we want to do is really find, we call it Project find these folks and build a relationship, welcome them to our community. We give them a basket with the teddy bear, but it's just not a one and done thing. We want to make sure that they know all the things that they can do at home, welcome them to the school, be a part of our events, but get them ready to be successful in kindergarten, because we know all the statistics that show if you don't do well on Brigance, what it does for chronic absenteeism, how they, that reading, all those types of things that we're trying to work on, it just makes it that much more difficult. All right, what do we got next, Marcia? I can't remember.
Parents.
So I'm wrapping it up, guys. I'm almost there. So we did everything we were doing. Okay, so this is like building a plane while we're flying it. We brought all our community members in. We had great participation, but I'm going to tell you, it wasn't until we had our parents show up that we had all these great ideas. At Reedland, we have parent mentorship programs now in place. We've got, All Pro Dads, which is a Saturday once a month where we bring on our dads and our kids and we feed them breakfast, and we just have fellowship and community in a high poverty area. So a lot of great ideas really came from our parents. Not to say the community, we didn't come away with some good things, but it really wasn't. We got to the trenches and listened to them that things just really started to blossom and open up. Okay. All right, last slide. I'm going to finish up with Kenny, the rest of the story. So poor Kenny, all right, his car breaks down, but by chance, a guy comes in donating his car to the CTE for the guys to work on in the shop. Well, Steve Eberzabel, who runs the hub, convinced him to sell that car to Kenny for $300. So now he's got transportation because he needs it to get to this internship with Ingram. Now, Ingram could have just washed their hands, say, we don't have time for this. We want to move on, get somebody else, but they didn't. They held on, waited for Kenny, and I love that about our community, okay? So what had happened since then? So he gets this job and he's making $18.75 an hour. So he's got this potential to get a job when he graduates, making $26 an hour, break poverty, all that kind of stuff. And we're around clapping and patting each other on the back like we did a good job. Well, as you know, it's not that easy. So in the meantime, like I said earlier, poor Kenny moved in with his girlfriend. When he turned 18, what did he decide to do? Get married. Well, why did you get married, Kenny? Well, his girlfriend's now pregnant. So now he's a senior, 18. He has a wife who's now pregnant. And he's got this job, okay? So he's trying to make money, trying to make all these things happen. But again, you fall down, we pick you back up, we try to support you. So one day out of the blue, for whatever reason, poor Kenny decides to come in the building after he comes back from CTE, and he sets off the alarms. So our SRO goes down there. When he goes down there, poor Kenny decides to take off and run. Not sure exactly what he had on him, but it was probably a vape, something like that. But because of his actions, he's basically jeopardized everything he had worked hard to do. This internship is about ready to be just poof, go away. So anyway, they catch up with Kenny. And again, Kenny had made some decisions that would cost him his ability to be, suspended 2 weeks out from graduation, mind you. But because we work as a team, because we step in where the family isn't, everybody came together and we decided, we're gonna have him finish out. He's kind of like McKinney-Vento. We're gonna go ahead and make him graduate. We're gonna have him do it at the hub. And, in his mind, he was thinking that, I'll drop out and I'll work for Ingram Barge. Well, Ingram Barge told him, guess what, Kenny, that's not going to work. You have to have your college, high school diploma before we hire you. And I think that's when he realized he made a mistake. But so many people in this story could have just walked away, washed their hands from Kenny, but they didn't. Ingram Barge stuck around. They said, I believe in this kid. We're going to work with him. And so he ended up finishing high school, got his degree, still works for Ingram Barge to this day. And if they tell you he's probably the worst welder they've got, but they believe in him. And so I guess my story is, with all this, what's your why? Kenny's our why. We need to find more Kennys. That's what drives us. We need to find more Kennys. We need to find more Karas. And that's what's exciting about this work. And whenever this grant ends or finishes, we're still going to be doing the same things, but definitely more intentional. I'm proud of all the Big Rock things that we have in place. I've learned so much, and I love listening to all the other schools and what they do. I love to, you know, borrow and steal. But anyway, I'm so proud. We wouldn't be where we are today without the grant, without Pritchard, without all the supports like Marcia. So again, thank you for the time. I know I whizzed through that, but and anytime I have an opportunity, I love to brag about it and talk about it. So if you have any questions, don't, you know, hesitate to ask. There's my long, crazy email with my crazy last name. So, but anyway.
Mark, thank you
you.
so much. And I'm going to open it to the floor to see if anyone has any specific questions that they want to ask of you. And what I am really glad that Mark shared like a generic story, but also he gave us a snapshot of really how a community can wrap around, and all of those community relationships really come to bear to help all students. With just that example, you can see that help comes in many, many forms, and that support comes in many, many forms. And it's just great that all of the trades came together. I know we talked yesterday in a meeting about how it is the creativity and the uniqueness of each community that really gives the power back to that community and the school. And so opening those doors for families, Mark, we've heard that story from countless schools and districts that have really embraced it's a community, and we're doing the community approach to really help our students move along. Is there anyone that has a question or comment for Mark? And I'll be quiet.
I just wanted to thank you, especially when you started out. You stated, you know, looking at what had occurred in the loss of a student, and looking at the first question was, how do we miss this, right? As parents, we also feel that, and whether it is that or, you know, they're struggling and things have just, you know, something comes about and everybody's like, oh, you know, many of our children go under the radar, and looking and trying to figure out how do we notice that? How do we get those, you know, whether you're a parent or you're an educator, how we work together to do that, because I think we've all maybe been in situations to where we didn't see it, and how we can look at those areas we can improve too, and that it's not that our children, they want to do good, they want to thrive, but how do we recognize that when they're not? So thank you.
And that's why we're excited about the Fort NGL model. We're not doing it well right now. And so we recognize we had to change. And I think it's through the community, you know, just talking with our community, what we're seeing, what are those needs. And I didn't say this, but I'm going to tell you now, last week was rough for our district. We actually had a teacher do the same thing, and that really hits us hard. And so what is going on? What are we missing? We've got to take care of each other, our mental health, and talk and touch base. But thank you though, Rhonda.
Thanks, Rhonda. And it is so important that we have a way. And I love, Mark, that you talked about what you all are doing just to incorporate those ninth graders as freshmen into that community of high school. And, you know, I was a former high school principal myself. And so that perspective of those kids coming in, like, how do you not miss some of the signals? Like, what can we put in place? And so anything that you can put in place to help kids acclimate and the community to support them, I mean, all of our kids benefit. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, Mark.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
You're welcome to stay with us. If you need to jump off, we understand. And Rhonda, thank you so much for your comments and questions. And then it's going to be hard for me to follow this up, you all. We've had, and especially having the commissioner with us to go through accountability. So I will make this brief and to the point. You guys all know that we do have the recommendations from this council. So I just want to give you an overview, an update of where we are currently on those recommendations. And so you can actually access those from the Family Partnership Council webpage. There is the link to get to that. And so I'm going to talk about 3 of the 4. I'll just remind you, The fourth one was actually having is the role that I fill. And so just creating that role at KDE. So I'm going to talk about the other three. So encourage districts and schools to develop local web pages to include more robust relationship building and communication metrics just around family and community engagement. We've heard a lot about that today. And so we're really looking at how do we not only share things that are going on well, but sharing that relationship building and communication, like how are we measuring that? And so that is something that districts are looking at and they're working through. I also will fall back on Mark's example of all of that information with QR codes was made very readily accessible to the community coming in for different events. You didn't have to come into the school deeper than an entryway into the school to have access and really connect. So that was just one example of that. And so we're also collecting those success stories that I'll talk about. We're also working, this council, and I'm going to ask for some input towards the end here. We're working with KDE to create a one-stop web page for parental and student rights, school-based decision-making, council information, legislative updates, specific EL resources, etc. We are working on our side in the background right now of what that web page might contain, what it might entail from across KDE to really make that easy for parents to find all of that information. We understand KDE is a very comprehensive, very deep web page, and there's so many resources across the departments, and we're trying to make that easier for parents. And so also this council with KDE leadership support will identify strategies for districts and schools around family engagement tracking and continuous improvement, parent leadership. I hate to read you guys, but you can see that integration and streamlining of required family engagement efforts in more meaningful ways. And the reason I bring this up is we're really working with not only within KDE, but also with the Pritchard Committee in the grant that Mark mentioned, and I know Laura's part of that as well, our Beard's on here today, with the Kentucky Community School Initiative about bringing all of the components and the parts. You heard mention about the school action plan earlier. I think Mark mentioned that, but bringing all of this into one cohesive way that we can operate instead of looking at all of these pieces and resources separately, like how are we meaningfully connecting the dot and including our community. So recommendation 1 is the success stories update. Here is the link where you can see them all. Let me try it real quick. I do want you guys to know we keep adding to it. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to go this way. We keep adding to it as we do get submissions. And, I mentioned this earlier when the commissioner was speaking. These are success stories that also include a student impact, the family impact, and the impact to the community. And so we have alphabetized these on that link now for easy access, and you don't have to go searching through all of them. Say you want to go look at something that McCracken submitted, you could just simply scroll through. So this is an ever-growing resource, and it's also housed on our Family Partnership Council. So this is really helping us meet that recommendation of helping districts and schools to identify those practices, and then they have a lot of these on their own web pages and their social media with the pictures and things that we saw in Mark's presentation as an example, but also you can come to KDE and find about those as well. We found they have been inspirational. A lot of schools that are across the state have submitted stories that really have shown some community impact. And so then the recommendation, I've just talked about this at length about that web page, is to really bring in all of the things that a parent might search for, as many as we can think about that are helpful. I will be talking to SBDM in a couple weeks with Mia Morales, who leads that out of KDE in our office, about just sharing things for families with that group that we're doing and that we are making available and helpful to parents, and just all of the resources. So we've also, part of that recommendation was to expand this to include other organizations that are helpful to all of this work. And so currently we're really delving into what's at KDE, so that we're doing that first part. And then here's where I need from you all today. I would like to have some suggestions from this group when you think about a one-stop shop web page at KDE as a parent, because you're representing so many organizations. And I know, Rhonda, you speak to us so clearly with the ESE lens. And I do love that Ms. Nagel is with us from PTA. I mean, I could just go on and on from all. We've got Leah from a co-op. So we have so many different lenses to bring to this. What do you see that would be helpful to be included in this one-stop webpage for parents and students? And then the second part of that question, or second question, would be what would be meaningful and important to include from that perspective? So I'm going to open it up to the floor. I'll give you while you're thinking, and let's see what you all come up with that maybe I have not thought of yet, or my team has not thought of yet.
So I think being very intentional to connect, not that you have to recreate all of, especially for students with disabilities, the resources and all of the wonderful work that OSIL has, but maybe a few basics, but then connect them, because one of the great things and through OSIL is they have a parent page already, so, but making sure, because if families only get this one page, then they don't know, and they need that very specific guidance, especially when you're talking about the rights, under the federal laws for students with disabilities. Another thing, too, that I think would be so meaningful as a parent and other families is having or linking you to the practical things that we can help our child be educationally successful. It is not having all the tools or how to help our children is one of the largest struggles. That we don't have the tools as families to be able to help our child, right? So linking on that in sort of a one-stop place to where we can get that assistance. I know some districts have on part of their webpage, I'm even thinking of how to help them with the reading comprehension. Not that you want the one stop to be all of it, but if it could be broken down, we don't want it to be too overwhelming, but we broken down to where here's where you can go to get that help, or those resources, helping with MAP. I know, let's see, it was a Northern Kentucky Educational Co-op. When COVID came about, they put on, and I believe it's still available, there was training and information to help the children, because the parents were having to do the role of the teacher, right? To be able to sort their child. So there's already, I think, so many great resources that's out there, but we're not connected to them, right? And everything. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
And I will share this, Rhonda, and thank you for sharing that. And I do want to say, one of the things in creating just our very first REPRA draft is like break it down into resources and then connect out to what's already there, because there are such resources. Like I said, it's such a comprehensive website that it's sometimes you don't know where to go. And so what we've tried to do so far is to really kind of break it down categorically. And then here's information about accountability and assessment. Here's information with special education, so that what are your rights? So we've linked to that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I also was thinking about very, very specific things in terms of, this is totally new to you. Here's a glossary for the terms. What is an ARC meeting? What does it mean? What is an IEP? And linking out to those rich resources. There's an area that I've kind of scratched in, an area for early childhood and all the resources that were, we kind of alluded to earlier, to help. But also there's the resource to the family guide, so that you can see the not the curriculum per se, but the standards that are covered and what is expected. And then there's the what to do at home. And also like the 5 areas of reading. And so comprehension was one. Like, what can you do at home as a parent when you're reading together before, during, and after reading? So really trying to harness all of those resources into one place that then you can link out. And when you get there, you've been to that page. It's chock full of other resources. And so we're just trying to kind of direct you over and think of that question that a parent might be searching for to help. So that was great information. And that helps me think, okay, we're on the right track, but I need more information from this group of what would be helpful.
I cannot figure out how to raise my hand. I apologize.
That's all right. Jump in here. I can't see it if it's raised anyways.
Yeah, I disconnected myself when I tried to do it. The thing I think is one of the biggest things is parents hear an acronym and they don't know what it means. Right. And then they try to find it. And then, if you put PTA, and you could get Parent Teacher Association, but you'll also get Physical Therapist Assistants. So making sure you say these are educational terms, what they are, and then link to those resources that you've already got in there. That is one of the biggest complaints I get. And I get it too. I'm like, okay, what did they just say? Now I've got to look up that term too. So making sure you have a good resource. I think there's some more, but I don't know that I can tell you all on the spot, but that's my first one, I would say.
And thank you. That was something that was also, we were thinking about is here's this, and I'll use school report card, for example. So a school report card, and then just a blurb of like what it is and what you'll find there, and then how to link to different portions of it instead of just a page of links. And I'm going back to what Rhonda and I were talking about. ARC, those of us in education, we know what that means. We know what an IEP is, but this is new language to you. We're spelling that out. This is what it is. This is where it is. These are your rights and all of those pieces. And so thank you for sharing it. It's really important that that stuff is very clear, because if you don't know, you don't know. You don't even know how to find it. So, Laura, I see your hand. And I'm sorry, Amy, I'll come back to you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
I think Tara was first. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, it's Tara. I'm sorry. Okay, Tara. Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. I don't know where this kind of relates or, falls into place, but I'm also the chair for Ohio Valley's regional collaborative. And I was talking to one of our members the other day, and she's trying, it's more early childhood related, and she's kind of on the same thing, a pathway of getting a site going for parents, a website, resources. It's called My Pre-K website, and it's where you list a whole bunch of resources in the area for families, childcare. You put in your zip code and it will kind of show you different things in the different areas surrounding you. They are trying to get it funded so that way they can get it up and running. So I don't know if this is something that could be connected with what you guys are doing to connect early childhood. This whole thing today was just relates to Head Start in so many ways, and, getting parents involved and the community involved. And so a resource like this for parents would be really helpful. I just want to make sure to throw that out there. It's Olivia Thompson with EC Learn, and she's working with a lady named Karen. I forget her last name, but I can look that up for you and get you that information. But this kind of sounds like the same thing, and I think it's great. And our families need that, especially families in the outer communities that we have a hard time reaching. So
absolutely. Thanks. If you would send that information to me. I know part of what we're beginning to connect is out to the governor's office with the early childhood resources, and just making sure. But yes, Tara, please send me some information. Thank you so much, Laura.
Okay, yes, of course. Yes, you're welcome.
All great ideas I've heard so far and things that I've thought of myself. I do use the parent and family guides a lot in the work with SIPL. So making sure that those are prominent. I think right now they're a little hard to find for some folks. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would mention is just that now that we have capabilities to do translation through AI, if there was some way on the KDE website that parents could be able to toggle through the documents, especially things like high school graduation requirements. Documents that KDE has in English right now, but that could easily toggle into their language of preference. I'm not a tech person, so I don't know what it takes to do that, but I know some school districts have that as part of their web pages. I feel like it's doable. And then I think a real-time update. You guys do a great job of making sure that your documents have like the last revision or any information has like last updated. But I also think a place for like really new news, like new legislation, new updates, like people could go there to find like the newest information from KDE. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes sense. And it's interesting. And that's and I'm not that tech savvy on that backside either, Laura. So some of the resources that I'm starting to compile in that draft are available in Spanish. I recognize that's not the only language that we have spread about, and also just being able to translate those documents that are not available would be great. So that's a great suggestion for us to explore as well. And then I do love the idea of new news, because, even though it's updated, something may occur since that last big update that maybe needs to take precedence over that. And so where do you find that, in the realm of that? So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? These are great suggestions. Anyone else? Well, if you think of something, you guys know how to get a hold of me, and you can just email me. You can find me. My email is on this, and on most of all of our, I think it's on all of our calendar invites. So I just want to thank all of you for being so thoughtful and present through our long meeting. I know our time is about up, but we have covered a lot of ground. We've had some great speakers and some great topics, and you all have been so introspective and reflective and really thinking about the needs and the things that you need in terms of what would be helpful, but connecting out for our students. So there is my email address if you think of something else. I work with Laura on some of her SIPL pieces, and it's just, that guide is a great resource, and we have worked to include that as well. But if you think of something that you think would be beneficial, or you have any additional input or topics, please let us know. I know Leslie is keeping a list for even our next meeting, which she will send out some information when that date is determined, I should say. So with that, I am going to bring us to a close. I just want to allow some space and time for any last comments or questions before we log out. I'm going to take that silence as we're all good. So thank you all for hanging in there with me today. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Thanks, Laura. May I have a second?
I second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so much, and I will see you at our next meeting. So watch for an email from Leslie Spears. Thank you.